Hello, everybody. Good afternoon from New Jersey. Good evening for those of you calling from that part of the world, and good morning for those of you who are just starting your day. My name is Gopal Patel. I'm the co-founder and director of Bhumi Global, which is a Hindu environmental organization, and I'm very happy to be the moderator or the facilitator for our webinar and discussion today, which is called Faith's Rising Climate Action Beyond COP26. We have a wonderful session coming up for the next hour, where we will be having a discussion with some very eminent panelists, followed by discussion involving all of you. Before we do get started, please put your names and where you're coming in from in the chat so we know who you are and which part of the world and which organizations you are part of. As we know, the dust is settling on COP26, the climate change conference that took place in Glasgow at the start of November. And now all of us are looking forward and looking ahead to see what is next. What are the things that we as faith-based organizations can do to increase ambition on climate change, on biodiversity, pollution, and the whole raft of environmental challenges that we are facing both locally and internationally as well. Today, we have people from faith traditions from all across the world joining us. And we know that faith-based organizations are one of the largest stakeholder groups in the world. And for us, our faith is a motivating factor to drive action and ambition to address environmental challenges. And all of us are putting our values front and center in this work because we know that as faiths, we are in a powerful position to address these challenges of climate, biodiversity, and sustainable development. So I'm very, very excited and happy to be moderating today. And as I said, please put your names and organizations in the chat box. And as we're going through the discussion today, if there are anything that comes up for you, any reflections, any thoughts, any questions you may have for our panelists, please also put those in the chat box, and we will be getting to those after we get through our panel discussion. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into that. Very happy to have our first panelist today, Lorna Gold, who is the Director of Movement Building at FaithInvest. Lorna's bio will be put in the chat box there, so I won't go too much into it, but Lorna has extensive experience working with faith-based organizations, both within the Catholic Church, within a variety of capacities, but also in the interfaith space as well, and is also a respected lecturer and author at the intersection of faith and climate. So Lorna, I would love to hand it over to you first to talk about what are the faith plans, what are your reflections on COP26, and how can we all move forward together and why this moment is so important. Over to you.
Thanks, Gopal, and just to say how wonderful it is to be here with everybody this evening and to see many faces who were with us just a short while ago in Glasgow. So for those who were in Glasgow, it kind of feels a little bit like a reunion of the wonderful time we spent together. And then there are many other people who I don't know, which is wonderful as well. So it's great to see everybody tonight. I'm going to share my screen. I want to give a little presentation, just some reflections on COP26, what happened in terms of faith action, and then move on briefly to talk about the faith plans for those maybe who are not so familiar, to talk about why are we talking about faith plans coming into this after COP26. So I have been to quite a few COPs, and I have to say that this year I saw faith communities playing so many different roles. I was just really impressed by the scale and the diversity of faith action at the COP. So those of us who were there, I think you'll recognise that faiths were playing many different roles. They were putting pressure on governments through being out on the streets in large numbers, engaging in practical solutions, with the private sector, with finance, in very practical spaces about how do you bring about change. They were in the blue zone influencing policy, particularly the Vatican delegation. There was an Anglican delegation there. And then they were also really playing a really important role in providing a space for reflection, cultural dialogue, and healing. So just to talk briefly about each of those things in order, I have never seen perhaps the only other time I saw such a strong faith presence in a climate space was back in 2014 when there was the big march in New York. But I was really impressed by the fact that in Glasgow, there was such a diversity of faith organisations. And I think everybody who marched in the streets of Glasgow that Saturday would have seen the sheer diversity and the fact that people of faith showed a great sense of unity, marching behind this wonderful faith and beliefs for climate justice banner. But faiths were not just out on the streets. I think that what really struck me at the COP was that the faith communities were actively engaged in solutions, in actually looking at how do we use our resources to shift the dial on climate change. So I'm just highlighting two events that I was part of, and I can share this presentation afterwards because I'd strongly encourage you to go and look these up. Both of these events really were wonderful events. Faith in the SDGs mini summit was organised by FaithInvest with GEFI, the Global Ethical Finance Initiative. And it was a really interesting dialogue with the finance community where it went right back to basic principles, saying if we want to solve the climate crisis, we need to rethink finance. We need to refound finance on solid ethical, solid values. And the faiths are where we need to be looking in order to reframe the financial sector and investing. And then on the right-hand side here, you see a really interesting dialogue that was held on fossil fuel divestment. Faith communities, just before the COP, 72 faith communities committed to divestment. And I think demonstrating very clearly that this issue of how you align your assets and your faith is something that's very important. So this kind of, just to give an example, a flavour of the kinds of roles that faiths were playing during the COP. Faiths also were really playing a really important role in terms of providing that prayerful space, reflective space. And I think that's often we underestimate the importance of that in these environments of really kind of intense dialogue. I think it was really important that the faith communities were there, giving this, in a sense, more of, I don't have to say, it was to give this real sense of a spiritual presence in many different parts of the city of Glasgow, both inside the COP and outside. And many moments of really profound dialogue and organising. I found, and maybe this is because COVID had happened and people hadn't seen each other for a while, but there was a real sense at the COP of people really engaging with each other on how do we build up the faith movement for climate and environmental action. And some of these pictures are pictures of two events that were held in conjunction with the Focolare movement and the Al Albeit community in Glasgow with FaithInvest. So all this faith action, where has it left us? I think that we are, the official outcomes of the COP leave a lot to be desired. This is just, I guess, a rough and ready analysis of where I see things going. But the outcome of the COP really can be summed up by saying too little, too late. Some people would say there was progress made, but I think that we are far, far from where we need to be in terms of the scale of the climate emergency. For me, the only acceptable or good outcome from the COP this year was that the governments agreed to bring the time frame for meeting forward to next year in terms of raising their ambition on climate change. And this is at a time when the ecosystem is destabilizing before our very eyes. These are 3 news stories just from the past 3 days about climate emergencies that are happening. The out-of-season tornadoes that are among the most destructive that the US has seen. The confirmation of the highest temperature recorded in the Arctic, and the Thwaites ice sheet, which is really at risk of collapse imminently. And it really points to the fact that these sleeping giants on the climate in our world are really stirring, and that we're ever closer, if not already reached a tipping point in terms of the climate. So it begs the question to me of where do we go from here as a faith movement for climate action and for ecological action. And I was really struck on the first night of COP by something that Reverend Martin Johnson said at the multi-faith gathering. He said something that might seem very obvious, but we all have to start acting as if we really believe that God created the world and that it's worth saving. We're really in a climate emergency, and I think the scale of the action that we need is really being laid before us. And I think the real point that I want to make in this short presentation is that faith communities and the work that's been going on really behind the scenes in the past few years, and particularly this year, points to the fact that faiths are waking up. Perhaps they're the other sleeping giants. They're waking up in order to act as stakeholders in the future, not waiting for governments, for COPs to sort out the problems. Greta Thunberg said something after the COP. She said, well, we have to accept that nobody is coming to save us from climate change. In a sense, the faiths are recognizing the scale of the problem is huge, but the scale of the resources at the disposal of faiths, the investments, the assets, the land, the buildings, it can be put to use to tackle these crises. But it'll take us all to act, and us all to act together. And we're in good company. There was a huge, one really important step forward this year was that the multi-faith appeal that was issued ahead of COP on the 4th of October had 2 parts to it. The first part was almost like business as usual. The faith leaders said to the world leaders, you better sort this out. The world is going in the wrong direction. You better do something at COP. But the second part of that statement is truly remarkable. It commits faith leaders to bold plans and to aligning their investments. It commits faith communities to bold plans and aligning investments. Now, I don't expect you to read this, but this is the second half of that statement. And read the bits that are highlighted. Commitment to far-reaching environmental action within our own institutions and communities, and working to make bold plans, striving to align our financial investments. And this is where the Faith Plans programme comes in. And I'll just say a few words about it just now, because I'll say a little bit more at the end. Faith Plans is a programme that is a partnership to enable all faith communities to produce 5 to 7 year plans to say how each community is going to tackle the ecological crisis in this decade. It is about creating momentum between faith communities and sharing our opportunities and ideas between us to create the kind of scale of movement that we need as a world in order to tackle the climate and the biodiversity crisis. The timeline for action is to work together, to start to work together in the next 6 months, to put in place these plans that can then be presented at a UN meeting towards the end of next year. The faith plans are multifaceted. They're really about faith communities articulating, according to each of our beliefs, what it means to act for climate and for a safe future. That means that each faith can design the faith plans according to their own traditions, and then to share the results of that together with others as we journey together along this path. And my final slide for now is to say that we're not at the start of this journey. For some people, this may be the first time hearing about faith plans, but already in the course of the last year, and all of these partners that are on the screen just now have become affiliates of the Faith Plans programme. So in a sense, if you're connected with one of these groups and enrolled in one of the environmental plans that the groups are producing, you're already affiliated to a faith plan. And this is really about us coming together as a faith and environment community to demonstrate the massive impact and to generate momentum in order to help to shape and to address the significant crisis that we're facing through climate and biodiversity. So I'll stop there for now, because I think we want to hear from those who are actually producing faith plans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorna, for that overview. I agree with you that, you know, I was in Glasgow and I've been at the COP since Paris, and the way that faith communities showed up in Glasgow hasn't been seen for many years. And I think something you hit on, which I really resonate with, is that we were both outside and inside. We were outside protesting, marching, chanting, but also we were inside where the policy discussions were taking place. And that's really, I think, so much part of the spirit of the faith plans, is that it's an all approach. We have to be doing everything we can, sitting at the table, sitting outside the table, to make our voices heard and push for action as strong as possible. So thank you for that. And thank you for outlining what the faith plans are and how we can get involved. And I know that you'll be coming back into this conversation towards the end of the hour with more details on that. But as you rightly said, we do have some panelists with us today who are working on faith plans and have been working, some of them for many years. And so I'm very keen to have a conversation with them to learn about the work that they're doing and what we can learn from their experiences. I'd first like to introduce my very good friend, Alan Ottaro from Nairobi. Alan is the founder and the executive director of the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa. They work in over 10 countries in the African continent. Alan has been a leader in this space for many, many years. You'll see his bio has just been posted there in the chat box. And so, Alan, I really want to start with you by asking you to share a little bit more about the work that your organization does, and also how faith is such a driving force in the work that you're doing in the context of the faith plans.
Sure. Many thanks, Gopal, for that very kind introduction, and what a pleasure it is to join you all this evening here in Nairobi. As you've just explained, SINESA is a platform that brings together young Catholics from across the African continent to respond to the challenges that we face, the ecological crisis that we see facing us in the world today, and to harness that energy, that enthusiasm, the talent that young people have to tackle and address this crisis. Living in Africa, certainly one of the youngest continents. I was just recently looking at the median age of some of the African countries. 20 years for Kenya, 18 years in Nigeria, 16 years in Uganda. So, really, besides the land, which, we are working to take care of, the people, the young people, you could say these are some kind of the two largest assets that we have in the continent. And as SINESA, we're looking at how we can, through our faith, mobilize these young people, get together, share the challenges that we face, but also the opportunities that stem from these challenges, and harnessing through the power of social media, for example, making it easier to connect a young person in Botswana with a young person in Ghana to exchange ideas about what innovative ways of responding to the challenges that we face they are doing at the level of the parish, at the level of the diocese. So really building a grassroots movement that is faith inspired. And for us, faith is at the center of what we do now, following on the encyclical letter of Pope Francis, Laudato Si, in which it invites everyone living on this planet, but also speaks to the value and the wisdom that faiths, the Christian faith, other faiths, indigenous knowledge, in dialogue with each other, can contribute to solving the ecological crisis that we face.
I'm just surprised by how young Africa is. I had no idea when you just shared that. That's really amazing. And I'd love for you to share a little bit more about kind of where you are in terms of the development of your faith plan, and what specific areas are you focusing on? Because I think part of the beauty of the faith plans is that it's not a one size fits all. Like you're saying, it has to be a grassroots movement, has to reflect the realities of what people are experiencing when it comes to climate change or biodiversity loss and so on. So yeah, please do share, what issues are you feeling like you're focusing on in your faith plans and where you are in the development of those?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Gopal, that's a really great question, because it also ties in with a little bit of the history of our own organization. SINESA, founded in the year 2012, officially became a movement in 2014. So relatively speaking, we are still a very young organization in the bigger frame of things. And so the opportunity to work on a faith plan for us really aligns with our long-term our medium to long-term vision of how we think and how we feel young people can engage, especially young people in the faith space, can engage with addressing and tackling the ecological crisis that we face, while also addressing some of the other social economic issues that we face here in the African continent. So Gopal, one of the questions that usually comes up a lot when we engage with young people, whether we are talking to them around biodiversity or climate, at the end of the day, a young person will raise his or her hand and say, well, so how does that help me put food at the table at the end of the day? How does that help me generate an income for my community, for my family, and so on? So we can see that addressing the ecological crisis can also create opportunities for these young people, to get a way of living, to tackle also, to help them live in dignity, a life of dignity by earning an income. And so for us, it's been a process of going back, looking at where have we come from since the year 2012, what have we been able to accomplish? And for faith communities and for many other organizations, I think we rarely have the chance to just pause and look back at what we've accomplished already. And I think that's a very important step from our experience, while, creating a faith plan, because then it helps you to see the resources that you have already at your disposal, the experiences that you've gathered over time, and the learnings that you have acquired that can help inform moving forward. And then the second step for us has been to consult widely with our chapters. So as you mentioned, SINESA has presence in just about 10 African countries and is still growing. And so we are always in contact with colleagues in all of these countries, from West Africa to East Africa to the South, listening to them about what is happening in their countries, what are the common challenges that we face in terms of the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and what can we do together. And recently we had a chance to engage with one of our SINESA clubs in a high school in Tanzania. And we said, we want to hear from them, because they're going to be, around longer than most of us, even though all of us are young people. But the ones who are youngest among us often have the strongest wisdom and the highest levels of ambition in terms of making a plan. And this moment, we have already prepared a first draft based on these consultations, based on our experience of looking back at where we've come from and listening to the experiences of what's happening in the various African countries that we have. And now we are looking to move to the next step, which is kind of more institutional in terms of our own organization, presenting it to our own board to get their feedback. Some members of our board are much older, so we can benefit from the intergenerational dialogue as well, to listen to their wisdom also as young people, and to see how we can tap into that wisdom to inform this draft moving forward.
Okay. That's great. I mean, it sounds like you're doing such amazing work, and it's great to hear that you already have the first drafts already done. And I like the fact that you're sharing your experiences around looking back at what you as an organization have done in the past, looking back and seeing what your organization has done in the past, and then consulting with other organizations as well, and learning and kind of incorporating that as well. I'm wondering, before we move on to Susan, our next speaker, I'm wondering if you can share just something that you find joyful, or something that you found really beneficial about engaging with the Faith Plans program. Because I think, as Martin Palmer, is on the call today, one thing he often talks about is that one thing that faith bring is this sense of joy, a sense of celebration. And I think this work has to be fun, because if it's not, we'll get bogged down and we'll get overwhelmed by it. So I'm just wondering if you could share briefly something that you really enjoyed about this process of doing the Faith Plans program.
Yeah, thanks, Gopal. And I like one of the words you just used right there at the end, which is celebration. And, in Africa, a lot of events, even events that you would consider to be sad events, are usually opportunities for celebration. So, when an elder passes on, there would be a celebration of that elder's life, as people, share the experiences of what they gained from interacting with the person, and so on and so forth. And so the faith communities in Africa also integrate the cultural aspects of our life here in Africa in their own faiths. And so it's really infused. And so celebration is a really important part of our way of life here in Africa, and certainly for most faiths across the world. One key element that I think is important is the aspect of collaboration, always looking around for opportunities for working across the board. So we are SINESA, we are Catholic Youth Network organization, but we know that our plan will we'll be meeting other young people from many different faiths. We'll be working with people also from indigenous communities and so on. And so all this provides really an opportunity for collaboration, for cooperation, because the scale of the crisis that we face, you've just seen some of the analysis that Lorna presented in terms of the outcomes of COP26. So the scale of what we are facing is something that cannot be addressed by one organization, by one movement, but it will need all of us coming together. I've read some articles, people say, how the fossil fuel companies, for example, how they kind of work together to exchange information, to exchange, tactics on how to continue their fossil fuel operations and so on. And I think that for us in the ecological movement, who are inspired by faith, we have this fantastic opportunity through these faith plans to also look at how do we, build our collaboration together. And I think FaithInvest has done a fantastic job, as we saw in the last slide from Lorna's presentation, with all the different groups and movements that are coming together now to also prepare our faith plans.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that, Alan. And I have to say, that's one reason I keep coming back to faith plans. This is the third time I'm engaging with the Faith Plans program, first in 2009, then in 2011, and now here we are in 2021, moving into 2022. And the opportunity to work with people from different faith organizations from every corner of the world is such a joy. And it's really where the magic is in this work of the faith plans. So thanks for lifting that up, and thanks for all your excellent work. We're going to move on now to next speaker. But if you have any questions for Alan and Lorna, please do keep them coming through into the chat box. We will be getting to them very shortly. It's my pleasure now to introduce our next panelist, Reverend Susan Hendershot, who is the president of Interfaith, Power and Light. Susan has been with IPL for many years now, first starting as the director there and in Iowa, IPL, before moving to the national office, first in San Francisco, but now based in Washington, D.C. You'll see her bio there in the chat. Susan, it's great that you're with us. I know you just flew in last night from San Francisco to Washington, D.C., so you may be a little bit jet lagged. But I want to start with an easy question then for you, which is, tell us a little bit about Interfaith, Power and Light, the kind of work that you do, and also why you feel the faiths have such an important role to play when it comes to addressing climate change.
Thank you, Gopal. And it's really good to be with everyone today and to hear from Lorna and Alan about the work that they're doing as well. So Interfaith Power and Light was founded in the year 2000 as a religious response to climate change. And we now consist of a national office that is headquartered in Oakland, California, and 40 state affiliates that are located around the country. So we work really at the grassroots and at the national level, kind of a both and situation. And our mission is to inspire and mobilize people of faith and conscience to take bold and just action on climate change. So we really have work that falls into sort of three areas. They're all interconnected, of course, but policy advocacy. And we do a lot of movement building work through our programs that we run. And we also work really hard to change the narrative around climate change so that we are focused on climate as a spiritual and moral issue. And I think that's one of the reasons that I think the faiths have such an important role to play, because we really can come at this conversation from a moral and ethical perspective, based in our values, the values that we share. And it gives us an opportunity, I think, to play a really critical leadership role in building solutions. Because, for example, policymakers hear our message very differently than they might hear a message from folks in the business community, or, folks who are in other, other areas as well. So we actually, think that the faith voice is incredibly important also because, there are a lot of us in the world, people of faith. There are a lot of people of faith in the world, and we're really critical stakeholders in what happens to this earth. And so I think that also gives us an opportunity to be really great advocates on the issue.
Okay, thank you so much for outlining the work you do and why you think it's important. And I know one of the key programs that you have is called Cool Congregations, where you work around encouraging places of worship to reduce carbon emissions, become more energy efficient. And that's a big part of the Faith Plans program. We know that if we're going to meet the targets of the Paris Climate Accord, we do need to reduce energy consumption or move towards green energy and away from fossil fuels. So I'm just wondering, could you speak a little bit about that aspect of the work at IPL and why you as an organization have focused on that aspect so much?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Cool Congregations is our longest running program. It started, it's nearly as old as the organization is. And part of the reason is we wanted to be able to model behavior, right? I think that's one of the critical things here is to say, we're not asking governments or businesses or any other stakeholders to do any of the work that we're not already doing. And so we have these amazing stories of congregations, and our website for that is just coolcongregations.org if folks want to look at that. We have stories of congregations that are reducing their energy use in their facilities, from very, very, small projects, very simple projects. It might be, adding insulation, or it might be, insulating windows, putting in new HVAC systems, and then others that are doing large solar arrays, for example. And all of it, I think at the heart of that conversation for most faith communities is that they're doing it because of their beliefs and values, not sort of in spite of their faiths and values, they're doing it because of their values. They're saying, this is the culture of our faith community. And so, of course, we would take these actions because we believe that we're called to both be good stewards of the earth and the gifts that we've been given, and also really good stewards of our children and grandchildren's future, right? This is the world, we're creating the world that we want others to inherit from us. And so I think that gives it a really different perspective. It's not always about the finances. The finances are certainly important. And of course, we know many faith communities don't have a lot of extra resources lying around. But we know sometimes the upfront costs are a little bit greater to do that work. But at the end of the day, it is about creating the change that they want to see in the world.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I'm wondering, your congregations, the link has been posted in the chat. The resources there, people can go there, learn about the program, but also see how they can incorporate that style of work into their own faith plans. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we really focus on with our Cool Congregations program is to say, you're not doing this alone. We encourage all of these faith communities to create a green team so that they're working in community with other folks and that they're engaging with their clergy or other faith leader. And then they're taking very practical steps to measure their energy use in their facility. And then they're creating their plan from there to see how and what are the best ways that their faith community can reduce. And we also offer a certification program. So anywhere from a 10% reduction to becoming carbon neutral, which we have some congregations that are carbon neutral. We give them a certification to thank them for the hard work that they've done to get to that point.
That's good. I love the idea of having a green team, because oftentimes this work is hard and sometimes it is like pushing a boulder up a hill. So like examples like that. And it's great to hear that people can go to the website, learn, and just like Alan's organization as well. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about seeing what's already out there. It's open source. We can learn from each other, share and everything. I want to get to the questions. We have some really good questions coming in, but Susan, I want to ask you one final question. Just like I asked Alan a bit more of a personal question. I want to ask you how you kind of sustain yourself and nourish yourself as you do this work, because it is difficult at times. It is overwhelming. But we are people of spirit, people of faith. What do you do in your own personal life to kind of keep yourself going with this work?
Well, I'm pretty grounded in some very, morning spiritual practices to ground myself for the day, including morning meditation and things like that. But honestly, I think the thing that sustains me more than anything is just working with the people. I love working with people. I love working in collaboration. We have a great team at IPL. We have amazing state affiliate leaders, and then folks like you and others on this call, and many of our other partners and collaborators. It's just, that's where I get the energy to keep going, is to be with other folks in this space.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. So we're going to move into the question and answer session now. We do have some excellent questions coming in, but I do want to bring in Martin Palmer first. And Martin, you've seen the faith plans from the earliest days, and now you're seeing it becoming such a big program over the last decade or so. Just wondering if you have any thoughts or reflections or questions based on what we've heard so far today.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Gopal. You're doing a wonderful job drawing so much of the energy out of this. I think the heart of faith plans is that it starts with the fact that the faiths are already doing something. And it's one of the best kept secrets on the planet, that the faiths have been active since the mid-80s, engaging in these issues. So it's not as though nothing happened until faith plans came along. At first, the first round of faith plans back in 2008, 2009 was primarily a celebration of so much that had happened. And we launched, it seems pathetically small now, and you were there, Gopal, as one of the projects. We had 34 plans that we celebrated at Windsor Castle. We were so excited. We invited Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the UN, and Prince Philip to come there. And we thought, wow, look at what we've done. And then, as Alan will remember, we in Nairobi in 2011 had another 34. And we thought, good grief, how many more can we get? And now we're heading into thousands. Because in a sense, I think what Faith Plans does is it says, my goodness, we are the stakeholders in the planet. My goodness, we actually know how to have joy in the midst of troubles. And my goodness, we're not alone. We're not alone. There are thousands of us doing this as well. So it's that sense of a movement that has grown. It's been 12 years since the first one in 2009. It's an astonishing growth. And I think for me, and I've been active in this world for 40 years, sometimes it really does feel like that, it is the coalition of the groups that have come together. We've always worked closely with Interfaith Power and Light. We've always worked closely with Synesia. But this, we've got 30 plus groups, secular and religious, who have come together to say, this can make a difference. And the UN, as you know, Gopal, sees the faith environment movement as the largest civil society movement in the world. Well, we've been largely invisible. Now, I feel we're standing up. So a huge thank you to all of you who are working on this. It is unbelievably exciting, and it is building on what we already have. We're not making it up as we go along. We're consolidating and going deeper and further. So thank you, Gopal, for that invitation.
Thank you, Martin, for that. And a great way just to segue to the questions. We do have some excellent questions coming in. We will try to get to all of them, but if we don't, we do apologize. The first question I want to get to, I think, is a really nice one, which is that it's been said on the webinar today, on the discussion, that we should let our faith guide our ambition. Would anybody like to explain or elaborate what that means for them? How can our faith guide our ambition when developing a faith plan? Who'd like to take that first? If you don't nominate yourself, I will ask you. So Alan, I'll ask you first. What does it mean when we say that our faith should guide our ambition when we're developing our plans?
Thanks, Gopal. So for me, that means having a sense of hope, having hope that things can change, as Pope Francis says in Laudato Si. Because without that, then it just becomes something that is, like many of the plans that people make that have a sell-by date, so to speak, and then you move on to the next thing after that. And so I think having faith at the center of that means that you are looking beyond the time limit that we put for ourselves as human beings, but you see way beyond. As Martin has explained, the fact that faith groups have been working for a long time, even before the recognition and the realization that there's something happening here. It came along that there's already been a lot of work that's happening, and that faiths are in it for the long haul. So for me, that's what that means.
I love that. Susan, do you want to come in on that as well?
I do. I was just thinking about that hope piece, and I was thinking about an exercise being with a group of people and sort of not writing out, but drawing, even those of us who are artists, drawing what would the world look like if, what's our ideal picture of the world, right? And doing this exercise with people who are putting in all kinds of, solar arrays and wind energy and clean water and, more public transportation and all these kinds of things that connect to exactly what we're talking about with the plans. And to say, well, if this is our vision, right? If this is our vision for what we want the world to look like, then creating the plan is how do we actually get from here to there. And I would say for most of us, if we were envisioning that perfect world, we wouldn't sort of hold back, right? We wouldn't just make it a small vision, we'd make it a big vision. So I think that grounding that in our values is really how we get there.
That's great. I love that. And I'm wondering, there's another question that came in as well, is where do we start? If we're struggling to begin creating a plan, where is the best place to start? And Susan, you spoke about a green team idea, and that's another question that came in. But so maybe Lorna, I'll start with you on this one. Where do we start? We're struggling, we have an idea. How do we get moving?
Yeah, I think I'm going to say a bit more about that at the end in the kind of next steps. But I think the thing to say is that there is lots of support out there for you. A big part of the faith plans is really making people more aware, whatever faith you're from, making people aware via the website, faithplans.org, which is a fantastic platform, just what supports there are out there for you. So on that platform, we have resource partners like Interfaith Power and Light, like the EAT Foundation, the many different groups who are prepared to give support, and then other faith umbrella organizations. So we can help to direct people on where they can find support. But I think that idea, the idea of forming a small team, whatever your faith community is, find like-minded people, find people who are wanting to start to do something and to form a small team and to get started, even if it's something simple. It's very interesting at the COP in Glasgow. I can see Yolanda and many others who were there from the Focolare community who straight after COP didn't want to wait. So there's an element of, yes, we need to be planning and we need to have a plan, but also we need to be taking action. So to get started, so straight after COP, they got together with the Al Albayt community and a forestry group that helps with tree planting. And they sent me pictures at the weekend of them all standing in the pouring Scottish rain, which says something, with the friends, the Al Albayt community and the Focolare together there, planting trees. That's, to me, it's that kind of action. Do something that really gives you hope, and then as you're taking the action, make the long-term plans. Learn from each other as well, and make the plans that are going to help us get there.
That's great. That's really helpful. And as you said, you'll be talking more about the hub, the online resources available. A question's coming, which I think is quite interesting, is how do we differentiate between faith communities and faith-based organizations such as Christian Aid, Muslim Aid, World Vision, CAFOD, and so on? And essentially, how do we ensure there's collaboration or alignment between the two? Because sometimes the big organizations have the resources, but it's the local communities that are aware of what the issues are. So wondering if anyone could speak to the interplay between the kind of the two ends of that spectrum.
Well, I'll be happy to jump in a little. I'd love to hear Alan's response to this too, because his network is obviously a bit different than our IPL network. You know, in terms of collaborating with other faith-based organizations, which we do quite a bit of, Interfaith, Power and Light, we often think about how we're not necessarily co-branding a new campaign together. We're all like pulling from our individual strengths as organizations and seeing, you know, where is the best place for us to plug in to any kind of work that's happening. And so, you know, it's a lot like the faith plans, where we have this collaboration between many organizations, each of which is doing its work in distinct ways. And there is definitely some overlap, but there's also some clear distinction in terms of our specific audience, maybe, or the ways that we do our work, or what we might focus on as an organization. So playing to each other's strengths, I think, is a really key part of any collaboration. And then, you know, I think about the individual faith communities as sort of the seeds where we can, you know, sort of model that behavior and, you know, implement specific measurements, whether that's ways that we're doing advocacy, policy advocacy, or maybe ways that we are reducing our energy use or putting up renewable energy. But those are, you know, just like the very local models of engagement. And many times those local faith communities are also collaborating with other faith communities in their local community, which I think is also incredibly inspiring as well. So I think it's, you know, it's about balancing out sort of the practical from the more planning, running a campaign, being a good partner, a good collaborator with other organizations, and playing to each other's strengths.
That's great. Alan, do you want to come in on that as well? Because, you know, your organization does span that spectrum of grassroots, but also high level policy and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with Susan. And one of the things I've realized, you know, working at various levels, is that at the end of the day, whether you're working with faith communities or with, faith-based organizations in the sense of the ones that have been described in the question, at the end of the day, you're working with people. So it's really about, building and establishing relationships. And through that, you come to discover that, those in the, faith-based organizations, whether they are large organizations or they are the much, smaller ones working at a regional level, national level, by building relationships and being able to open channels of communication, of sharing, and so on, you come to discover that often you're saying the same things, but sometimes in different words, different terminologies in terms of the space where people are. So, for example, if you're a faith-based organization and you have to make a presentation to a policymaker, a government official, or a UN agency, there's a certain language that you capture your the concerns that you have to present to this in these spaces. But when you come to sit together, at a round table and just exchange ideas, you find that in fact, all you're saying is really the same thing. And so, by having more opportunities for dialogue, then you can find that you strengthen the opportunities for making those linkages between, the concerns of people at the grassroots, and channeling that into what's happening at the national level in terms of policy, or trickling down from, international level, like such as the COP, and looking at what is the impact of some of these decisions at a regional level, at a national level, and what does it mean for the people in the faith communities where we live, where we work, and so on.
Great. Thank you, Alan. This is such a rich panel. It's great. Any question we have, I'm sure we can answer it between the three of you. Lorna, there's a question regarding if you could explain a little bit about what the relationship is between the Faith Plans program and the Laudato Si Action platform.
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I wear two hats. So I'm the chair of the board of the Laudato Si movement, and I'm also the program manager, or not the director of movement in FaithInvest. So just to be clear on the Laudato Si Action platform, the Laudato Si Action platform is the big initiative that the Vatican has just kind of launched in collaboration with the Laudato Si movement and many other groups to implement Laudato Si across the Catholic Church. So it's an online tool, and the wonderful thing is that it's affiliated with the Faith Plans. So anybody who signs, any organisation that signs up to the Laudato Si Action platform and produces a plan through the Action platform is then enrolled, or not enrolled, is affiliated to this wider effort, and the data and all the kind of whatever is committed to within the Action platform will automatically be counted as a faith plan when it comes to next year and when we announce all the faith plans. That's wonderful. However, we'd still encourage you, if you want to produce your Laudato Si plan in a multi-faith environment, engaging with all these wonderful people from different faiths, you can still enroll with the faith plans and be part of this wider multi-faith community. And I think that's really what's really kind of, as you called it, Gopal, the magic of the faith plans. It's the Laudato Si Action platform is wonderful, and it is specifically targeted and geared towards the Catholic community, and it will have a huge impact within the Catholic Church and even beyond. This program enables the sharing and learning between the different faiths, so you can learn what others are doing. And then the other thing that is really, I think, additional through the faith plans is the fact that we have such a wealth of resource partners and events coming up, because the platform, the Laudato Si platform, is an online platform. It's an online tool that you fill in, and then you go off and do your work, and then you come back. We see this as much more of a collaboration, a sharing, learning across different faiths. So they're very complementary, and especially the Catholic partners, I'd encourage you to do the audit on the Laudato Si platform and sign up, but you'll get a lot of ideas and support also through engaging in this multi-faith community faith plans.
Great, thank you, Lorna, for explaining that distinction, because I think it is important that people understand. Like, we know that this is a platform for collaboration. This is a platform to learn from other faith communities and so on. And I see other friends on this call, or other colleagues. You know, I see Jonathan and Arthur, and I see David Shreve and other notable experts in this field who, you know, are all part of this movement on the faith plans. I'm going to have to unfortunately close the Q&A session of the call today, because we do have to wrap up in a few minutes. But I do want to thank Susan and Alan for your contributions. Lorna, I want to hand over to you. I know you have a few final words to say about the faith plans and next steps and how people can involved. So Lorna, over to you.
Yeah, so just a few slides from me just to say, well, where do we go from here? So if you want to continue this journey of faith plans, the first thing I'd say to you is go on to the Faith Plans website, the platform, and have a look around. I don't know what's happened there. Have a look at, it's gone backwards. Have a look around on the website, and you'll see lots of different stories, case studies, profiles of different people, and you can sign up there to the website and to the newsletter. And then if you want to get really involved in signing up to produce your plan, you'll find lots of resources from many different faiths already up there, and lots of guidance. Last year we did 6 different webinars on the different aspects of the faith plans. All that information is up there. You can scan through it yourself and look at what is most interesting to you. And very shortly we'll be also putting up a baseline study where you'll be able to download a baseline and calculate where your baseline is in terms of your community and where you would like to get to in your faith plan. A date for the diary is the 13th of January 2022. Next year, we're going to be running a series of fairly in-depth workshops to get people started, get people going on producing a plan. So the first workshop is going to be on the 13th of January, and you are all invited to that. And if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll receive information about that early in the new year. So just in summary, these are the next steps. So sign up, make your commitment. That commitment is really a commitment to learn more about the faith plans. You can start looking at the resources. You can join the online workshops. Check out, there's links to all the partner organisations on the website as well, so you can look at all the partner organisations and get in touch. And the Faith Plans team, that's Catherine, Tilly and myself, are eager to hear from you and happy to answer any questions. And that's the general email there is for Faith Plans. You can contact us there. So that's about it.
Great, thank you so much, Lorna, for outlining what the steps are. Head to the website, great resource, great hub. Sign up for the website and sign up for the newsletters, the workshops and webinars coming up next year, and get in touch with yourself or Catherine for more information. We are out of time. We're at the top of the hour. We want to respect everyone's time, so you can go have your dinner or your breakfast or your lunch or go for a walk, whatever you need to do next. Thank you so much for joining us for this Faith Plans discussion, and we look forward to connecting with you in the new year. Have a wonderful holiday season and wish you good health, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gopal.